Welcome to DFS Karma, where we talk about our favorite fantasy sports plays for football, basketball, baseball, and pretty much everything else. Be sure to check out and create an account with all of our partners, such as monkeyknifefight.online, prizepicks.online, and stathero.online. Use the promo code KARMA on any of these sites to get an exclusive deposit bonus. And don't forget to check out all of our free fantasy content on dfskarma.com, as well as our own premium plays. Without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Please welcome today's hosts.
What is up, Karma Nation? Welcome into the second ever edition of The Perfect Pivot, our NFL GPP podcast. I am your host, Justin Bales, joined by Ben Hostler. You guys probably know us from literally every other podcast we do. But, you know, we're here for our NFL GPP. We'll be looking at the chalk options and telling you our favorite pivots off of them. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm ready for NFL Week 2. Even though we're only in the second week, I feel like I'm pretty down with my process. I'm feeling pretty good. And just the weight, man, I'm so used to these daily sports. The weight kills me, man, from week to week. It really does.
Yeah, it honestly sucks because you're starting your process like basically Monday. And then, you know, you have to wait 6 days on Sunday before you can do anything. But I mean, it was a really successful week 1 for us. I think it depended honestly on which 4K running back you used on my team. If you used James Robinson, you cashed in tournaments. If you used Antonio Gibson, you finished a couple points out. I know, Ben, your team on DraftKings absolutely smashed, and then both of ours, mine cashed tournaments, yours cashed cash games on FanDuel as well. But your DraftKings optimal was fantastic last week.
Yeah, it was a good week. I told Anthony on the cash process, it's always nice to start with a win. I hate starting with a loss. So hopefully we can just carry that momentum for a couple weeks here. And I don't know. I went 12-5 last season, so my goal was at least 13 wins this season. So we'll see if I can get there.
I mean, starting right for it. If you guys want our core plays, obviously you can go over to dfskarma.com/shop. You can get I believe you can get either a week or a month of NFL. If you played last week, you would have easily paid off your subscription. So without any further housekeeping here, we're going to just jump right into it. We will be talking about a few quarterbacks. Each position really. And we'll just discuss our favorite pivots off of who right now is looking like they're going to be the cash options. So at quarterback first, I know it doesn't seem like Josh Allen's getting a lot of ownership, but I'm just going to put Dak and Josh Allen together because they're only 100 off of each other. Who is your pivot off of those two? And, you know, it has to be off of Josh Allen because I know you literally are just going to play him everywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to play Josh Allen. I'm going to be way overweight on Josh Allen. So that really is who I'm playing. But if I'm pivoting off of those two, not counting Lamar as well, I'm going to go with Tom Brady. We kind of were talking about it after the MLB podcast today, but I think this sets up really well. Obviously, you know, we were all over the Raiders last week against this Panthers defense. We love to target them. Last year, they're going to be one of the worst units in the NFL. They're really young. Brady got embarrassed on national TV, right? 4:00 game, everybody was watching it. Through that pick six, did not look very good. So I think that, you know, he's really going to come out and want to have a big game this weekend, and it's the perfect matchup to do so in. Godwin being out does, if Godwin's out, I guess we don't for sure have that news. He's doubtful. But if he's out, that does hurt his ceiling a little bit. But I think overall just you know, the matchup is really right for a get-right spot. And I don't think that they're going to let up if they jump ahead. I think they're just going to pour it on after that week 1 game. So I do like Tom Brady stacks in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm really considering Brady, especially with, you know, the top receiving options. And I'm not talking about Chris Godwin. If I'm pivoting off of one of those two, though, Prescott or Allen, it's going to be up $100 to Aaron Rodgers. He looked phenomenal last week, and we saw Mitchell Trubisky just carve up Detroit. He wasn't overly efficient, but man, did he dominate them. Rodgers is just going to be a lot more efficient, and I don't believe that Detroit has anyone on their defense that is going to really stop them. I know, obviously, he might not get the 4 touchdowns again. I honestly wouldn't put it out of the question, but Aaron Jones looks like a really good bet to score if you just essentially if you're just looking at Vegas and what's going to happen. Aaron Jones is bound to find the end zone, but Aaron Rodgers is one of my favorite tournament options, and with him being literally essentially the same price as Allen and Dak, and then obviously way more expensive than Kyler Murray, who we'll talk about next. Aaron Rodgers at 6,900 is going to get virtually no ownership, and I'll 100% take that in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call. I like someone from the Packers, which we'll talk about later, but I don't hate that call at all.
We can move to Kyler Murray, 6,100. Who's the pivot off of here? And to be 100% honest, I don't even know if there is one. I've been looking around. There's not many guys I like. So is there anyone you're looking at near Kyler Murray?
I think, like, if you want to get really weird, so how I'm playing this is I don't play a lot of teams every week, right? I'm probably, like, I play about 3 to 4 teams a week on DraftKings. FanDuel, I play, like, 2 teams. So I don't play a lot of teams. If I was going to play a lot of teams, I think Deshaun Watson is somewhat interesting just because he's priced right by Murray. He has the rushing upside that Kyler Murray does, and it's a horrible matchup, right? Horrible matchup against the Ravens. Ravens have a really good defense, but the Ravens are gonna be able to score in this game. Like, they're not. The Texans' defense is horrible, so the Ravens are gonna put points up. They scored 40 on the Texans last season when they played. So even if the game gets out of hand that way, that just sets up well for Watson in garbage time. We saw him kind of get that easy rushing touchdown against the Chiefs in their first game. And if I'm taking a quarterback like as a straight pivot in tournaments, I do want someone that has upside with their legs, which Watson does. And that is one of the higher over-unders of the week, mainly due to the Ravens' massive team total. But I do think that he's somewhat interesting in tournaments if you're playing a lot of teams.
Yeah, I like that. Really, no problem. Just because game script's going to be perfect for him, and he obviously has the rushing upside. I think I would drop down a little bit, and I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill. If you know me, I have been saying Ryan Tannehill is good for a long time. It was just kind of Miami that was destroying him. If you look at his game log with the Titans, I believe he's now started 13 games for him. He has thrown 2 or more touchdowns in 11 of those games, and I believe he has 3 games with 3 touchdowns. He's generally not going to throw for like 400 yards like some of the other guys have, but he can add a few rushing yards. He's just super cheap, and if you're getting to play, and I know we talked about Derrick Henry's prop before coming on here. It's like one of the most ridiculous rushing props we've ever seen. It's at like almost 120 yards is the over-under. But Tannehill can still get the touchdowns. And we saw Jacksonville stick around and then beat Indy last week. Honestly, feels like a spot where Indy was probably just sleeping on them a little bit, and Jacksonville had a good game. I doubt they're actually that good, But Tannehill just seems like the kind of guy. Even last week, they scored 16, and Tannehill had 2 touchdowns. So, he can always do it. And at 5,900, I feel like outside of more or less Kyler Murray, there's not too many people around here that really have his upside.
Yeah, I like that call. Does AJ Brown being out affect that at all, or no for you?
I mean, I don't like it, but I still feel like it's not solely AJ Brown. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a huge part of it, but I feel like it's more because defenses are just selling out on Derrick Henry that it's easier for someone like Tannehill to score. You know what I mean? Yeah. So no, we saw he scored 20 last week, and AJ Brown did virtually nothing. I think it hurts him, and don't get me wrong, I probably won't end up with any Tannehill this week. I don't play enough lineups, but I do think if you're pivoting off Murray, I don't think he's that bad of an option.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a Watson team now that I'm talking about
I mean, hey,
this.
sometimes you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
So moving on to running back, there's two that are relatively close in price. They're only 300 apart, and it's Ezekiel Elliott and Derrick Henry. I mean, we know Jonathan Taylor is going to get a ridiculous amount of ownership, but do you just think like basically every cash team is going to have those three? Because Elliott and Henry are way too cheap, especially for the matchups.
I would say the smart players will play all three. I think that a lot of casual players will probably have one of Henry and Zeke and then Taylor. I don't know if I don't think if they'll all be like massive chalk, but I think that the right build would have all three of them in, and it's not going to be not popular, but I wouldn't say everyone's going to have those three.
Yeah, I would agree with it. I think a lot of people just don't like, paying up like that. And it kind of limits what you can do elsewhere, but there's so much value at receiver that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Who are you looking at to pivot off of Elliott or Henry? And I mean, there's not that many guys like right around their price, so you can kind of move around a little bit if you want.
Yeah, I have two guys I really like. I'm gonna let you go first here, just so I don't take both. Like, I don't want to say two guys I really like, and then it's one of the guys like that you were gonna talk about.
I have two that I also like. So
I'm curious to see now. Let's see if we're on the same page or not.
one of mine I know for sure is not yours, and it's Austin Eckler.
Okay, yes, that is not one of mine.
Listen, Taylor didn't throw the ball to him, and they make it sound like he's not going to get that many catches this year. I don't care. He caught, I forget the numbers exactly against Kansas City, but they don't stop the running back from catching the ball. They're going to throw to him. I'm so confident this week, and I feel like that leads it to him catching like
You're
one pass
so
again.
confident in Austin Eckler this week.
No, not in Austin Eckler.
Oh, just in
as
them.
a whole. Just that they're actually going to throw to him. I
Okay.
promise he will get more than that one target.
Okay.
And then the other guy that I like is 100 below Eckler. It's Raheem Mostert. I mean,
Wow. Okay. This is neither of the two that I had.
I figured it wouldn't be. I didn't think you were going to them.
Okay.
But Mostert gets the Jets, who actually looked solid against Singletary and Moss last week. They held him to virtually nothing. But I don't care that much because I think San Fran's line's better. Mostert, honestly, is a better back himself. And he's going to be more involved in the passing game. I believe he saw 5 targets last week, which, if you know Mostert from last year, he didn't really get any targets whatsoever. And with George Kittle out, they're just going to have to kind of game plan more of very specific plays that they're going to run on offense. I don't think they're just going to, kind of do whatever, which more or less is what you can do with someone like Kittle. And if that's the case, I think that they're just going to utilize Mostert a lot more. If he gets like 5 more targets, I mean, he's already a very good runner and is always a touchdown threat. So just adding the targets adds to what was already a high upside running back.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So the one thing that was concerning me with him is just I don't know how much Tevin Coleman's going to play because they're not going to be on the West Coast this week. I haven't seen like anything on that though. I would just assume he would play a little bit more, but
Coleman's going to play more, but it's tough for me to believe that they're actually going to take like a large chunk of Mostert away from Tevin Coleman. You know what I mean?
Right. My two were Aaron Jones and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So
I knew it.
You knew. All right. Well, Jones, we kind of talked about this earlier, but he got a lot of red zone usage last week. They like to get him touchdowns. I mean, he had what? Did he have 3 games last year with 3 touchdowns or more? 2. I know one he had like a 4 touchdown game, but
he had 18 total. So
yeah, he had a couple games where he went crazy with touchdowns, and they like to get him touchdowns. They like to give him the ball when they're close. I don't think this Lions team has any pass rush at all. Like you said, Rodgers, he's going to have time to throw and pick out his guys downfield. And I think that the Packers are probably going to be in control of this game relatively easily. I don't know if the Lions have that much of a chance to stay close without Kenny Galladay. I do think that affects them pretty heavily. So I like Aaron Jones a lot. I'm going to have him on a couple of my main tournament builds. And then Edwards-Helaire, I mean, I was all over this guy before Damian Williams went out, which before he opted out, you knew I still had him. pretty high in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
rankings.
You are way too high on him because there's no way he's just running away with this job with Damian Williams, and I will stick by
All
that
right.
for
Well, look,
forever.
he was, I think, after week 1, after all the games were done, he was leading the league in rushing, and he played almost 80% of the snaps in the second half. So he really took over late in that game. I like that they're going to a dome. This is the second time ever Mahomes has played in a dome. I believe. I don't think he's ever played in a dome except for one preseason game. Um, so do with that what you will. If you think he's gonna ball out in the
All
dome, but
right.
I do like that. I like them going to the dome. And Eric Bieniemy came out and said that Edwards-Helaire was going to continue to get the goal line work, and they think that if he would have followed his blocks correctly in that Thursday night game, he would have gotten in the end zone on one of those close ones. So they're going to stick with him on the goal line. So I like that. 7,400 I think is too cheap for the upside he has in that offense. And the way that the Chargers defend, they kind of keep things in front of them. They don't want to allow big plays. So I think that kind of hurts Tyreek Hill in this specific matchup. And I think we could see Edwards-Helaire have a pretty good game at his price with the late afternoon hammer 425 game.
Yeah, I like it. My only concern is that he's such a hyped up guy, and then he actually looked really good the first week. And obviously, if he's going to continue to get the goal line work, eventually he's going to get in. He doesn't even have to be good.
Right.
He's just going to get in from how much work he's had. I feel like he's going to get some ownership. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
not enough.
Yeah, he's not going to be that crazy because Henry is going to take so much. Zeke will take a lot. Jonathan Taylor's going to take a lot. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor's, a good bit less, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I think Jones would have more ownership than Edwards-Helaire personally. I guess I could be wrong on that. I haven't checked any ownership projections though, so I could be off on that.
I also haven't really checked any. I personally I would say that Edwards-Helaire will be higher on than Jones, but
I think they'll both be way lower than Henry or Zeke though.
Oh yeah, I think so too, and I do think it's a good pivot, especially since you would just assume that Kansas City is really
you would assume you would assume they're going to be winning this.
So then the final one, obviously, we talked about is Jonathan Taylor. Realistically, he's probably going to be the highest owned running back on the slate. It would be weird if he's not. In my article, I have David Johnson and David Montgomery both outlined as tournament options. I really like both of them. I'm not going to go into that here. If you want to see what I have to say about them, dfskarma.com. That's also where you can find all Ben's, all his work and everyone else that's on the NFL staff. Just a ton there, but I'm going to go elsewhere with my pick here. But first, I'm 99% sure I know where you're going, but hit me with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Miles Sanders. I talked about him on the Game Theory podcast that we did, but I don't know. I had Miles Sanders really highly ranked for season long. I absolutely love him this season, but I'm starting to get a little bit worried that he's more hurt than they say, because I saw this whole thing with Devonta Freeman visiting the Eagles today, and that tells me that he is more hurt than they're letting on. And I think that's a concern. Like, there's nothing you can really do about it from a season-long perspective when he got hurt, and then it seemed like it didn't matter. But now it seems like he may have re-aggravated something or whatever. But they said he's 100% fine to play in this game. So I'm going to roll with him in some tournament lineups, and we'll see how he looks. I think that he's going to be involved in the passing game. Zeke looked really good in the passing game against this Rams defense last week, so I think that helps him. I think if their line is struggling again, they could utilize some quick passes to Sanders out of the backfield. And I think 6K is too cheap for someone of his ability if he's healthy. And I think that the health concerns will just keep the ownership down. And I'm fine betting on guys that we don't know in tournaments. It's not like I'm playing them in cash. So.
Yep, I agree with you. I felt good about him, and then I felt worried because it just seemed like the way that he was talking, he was like, "I'm fine, but the coaches aren't going to play me." Not that they won't play, like they're not going to play him full snaps, but now it's seeming as if he will get full snaps.
Yeah, they seem like they're giving him his full run on Sunday, so that's good.
So I'm 100% fine in tournaments. I'll go 100 below with Kenyon Drake. I don't love the matchup against the Redskins, honestly. Their defensive line and their front seven is just nasty. They can get a lot of pressure, but Drake got 18 touches and only saw 2 targets. I expect that to go up at times during the season. And I feel like this is a good spot where they could catch the Redskins pass rush coming up field, and they could get a few screens off to Drake and stuff like that. But realistically, it's a team with an extremely high total that is supposed to be winning by quite a bit. You know that they're going to lean on Kenyon Drake. He's just like 100% their lead back. So if at the end of the game, he's getting his rushes, and we saw last year, he ended the season with he had 2 games that were right around 40 fantasy points each. So the upside is very clearly there. He's only 5,900, and it just doesn't seem like literally anyone's going to use him, specifically because of Jonathan Taylor there. But it's also just not a great matchup on paper. And people tend to just kind of avoid that instead of just taking their shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good call. I think I'm gonna be underweight on the Cardinals, I think, this week. But if I was gonna play somebody, I do think Drake is particularly interesting. If I was gonna choose one of them, it would be between him and Kirk. Like, there's no reason for me to play Kyler. Like, tournaments ownership will always, there's no one gonna be dominating ownership at quarterback in tournaments. But for cash games, I think he's gonna be probably the highest owned quarterback on DraftKings. So I don't see any reason for me to have a ton of interest in him. So I think if I was going to pick one, I do think Drake is in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, we could move to wide receiver now, and the first chalky guy is going to be Devontae Adams. He's the most expensive receiver on the slate. 17 targets last week, plenty of red zone action. He caught 2 touchdowns. I find it hard to avoid him. I feel like even at the chalk, you kind of got to play him. But is there anyone up top that you would be willing to pivot to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be Julio for me. Like Hopkins, yeah, he saw 1 billion targets last week. I don't know, like we can't expect him to get that amount of targets every game. And I think that, like I said, I'm just going to be underweight on the Cardinals in general. So whatever. And then Tyreek Hill, I already went into about how I think it's a bad matchup. Not really a bad matchup for him. It's just I don't know if he's going to pop off a big play against that defense when they're going to try so hard to keep everything in front of him. So I think it obviously has to be Julio. It's the best game of the weekend. 7,400 still feels too cheap for Julio, and he once again didn't score a touchdown last week, but it didn't matter. He still put up well over 20 DraftKings points without even finding the end zone. So that just shows how high his floor is, and if he ever does get a multi-touchdown game, I mean, he's gonna break the slate.
Yeah, get ready. I really like Julio. That's who I would go to. I will say one thing about DeAndre Hopkins. Someone tweeted out that DeAndre Hopkins saw 12 targets last week as his quarterback's first read. So more or less design plays directly to him. It led the NFL along with Devontae Adams. He also saw 12. So, I mean, it really looks like they're looking to get DeAndre Hopkins involved. And if they can hold off the pass rush, Washington's secondary is not going to even come relatively close to stopping him. So I do think that's interesting. I just prefer Devontae Adams. And if I'm not using Adams, I'm honestly moving down to Julio too. So, it makes sense. I do think that Hopkins does come with quite a bit of upside.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I feel like it's tough to know who like the mid-tier chalk is going to be, because it looks like it's going to be Amari Cooper. But at the same time, now if Chris Godwin's out, we could get Mike Evans. Marquise Brown is 6,200, which I don't necessarily think that he gains a ton of ownership over Cooper, but it could happen. And it looks like Calvin Ridley, as the week goes on, is starting to creep up a little bit more. He's 500 more. Right now, though, we're going to say Amari Cooper. We'll obviously leave Evans off of this, but who are you pivoting from Cooper, just excluding Mike Evans here?
Yeah, I like Steph Diggs as a stack with Josh Allen, which we were kind of talking about before we got on here. But Diggs is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He's really good man-to-man. The Dolphins came out and ran 80% man coverage in week 1, so I think that bodes really well for Diggs. I think people are going to be scared of his matchup with Byron Jones. So if I'm, on my tournament teams, if I'm stacking Josh Allen, I'm going to go with Steph Diggs.
I like that. I will say I'll give two guys here because there's two guys that I'm willing to pivot. If I'm sticking at the same price, Will Fuller, he's going to have great game script. He saw plenty of targets. I think he had over 50% of his team's air yards. It's surprising that he's still kind of like people don't really want to play him. It doesn't make that much sense. We saw him drop a ball on Thursday when they played. It was a pretty bad drop on a fade, but he caught 8 of 10. He had 112 yards. He didn't score. Like, just wait until he gets in the end zone. We all know Will Fuller has that pop-off game. You know what I mean?
For sure. I really like Fuller in tournaments. So.
And at 5,600, I will go to Amari Cooper's teammate and Michael Gallup. I wrote him up in my article. You can see really why I like him there, but no one's going to play him. The chalk's if you're playing a Dallas receiver, the chalk's going to Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup is significantly cheaper, and I think that this is the type of game where he can go absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I like that. We kind of broke that down on the Game Theory podcast, but
yep.
I mean, just taking the lowest owned guy there makes a ton of sense.
And then our final guy at 4,500 is Deontay Johnson. Stupid price tag, just stupid. He saw 10 targets last week on Monday.
Yep. Yeah. 10 targets.
Not only did he see 10 targets, but he opened the game with a muff punt. His third target, he was run blocking and it hit off his back. Like, if there was any time that Pittsburgh was like, you know what, we're not giving it to this guy, it was on Monday, and he still saw 10. So feels like his role in the offense is pretty safe. Who are you looking to pivot off of here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a low-owned guy here. The problem is I think ownership is going to be spread out in this range because there's so many guys. So I'm going to stick with Paris Campbell. I think he's going to end up being lower owned than we originally thought. Like, Matt was talking about him being 15 to 20% owned on Wednesday night when we did that podcast. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think Christian Kirk is going to get ownership. I think Deontay is going to get ownership. We could see some ownership for Scotty Miller if Chris Godwin misses. So I think Campbell is in a really good spot. Vikings, obviously, have a bad secondary, which we saw last week, and they have a slow secondary, which is really good for T.Y. Hilton and Curtis Samuel both. Michael Pittman Jr. looks in doubt for this game. Jack Doyle's out, which helps Campbell even more because he plays in the slot. It's going to help him suck up some more of those close targets over the middle of the field. So I really like Campbell at his price point, and I'm considering him in cash games, honestly.
I like it. If you told me Paris Campbell in cash, I would say, yep, let's roll it. I really like him. To be fair, dude, there's so many guys I like around this range.
Yeah, that's why I think ownership will be spread out because there's so many guys.
Just as pivots that I probably won't even be able to do. Like Brandon Ayuk at 4,300 makes so much sense. You have Brashad Perryman down at 3.8. Quintez Cephas at 3.8. I know you like him.
Yeah.
My guy here, though, I don't think he's right now. I don't think he's going to get the ownership. If Godwin is out, I do think some ownership gets pushed to him. I don't think it'll be enough. Scotty Miller at 41. People more or less see him as like the Wes Welker, Julian Edelman type slot guy that Brady likes, but that's not really too much who he is. He ran a 4.44. He can get down the field, and Brady's deep ball looks really, really good this year. I think Scotty Miller has a lot more upside than just getting 5 or 6 catches where, the Wes Welker type deal. I think he can break them long. 4,100 is just way too cheap, especially if he's the second option more or less in the offense.
Yeah, Cephas in particular is someone I really like in tournaments. We were talking about that earlier, but I don't know. I mean, I'm probably going to play him at least if in 3 max, I might end up with Quintez Cephas on 2 of 3 teams, honestly. He's just too cheap on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what else you can say about 10 targets last week. Yeah,
commanded 10 targets in his first NFL game. Over 30% of the team's air yards. Obviously, they're going to be probably trailing, so they're going to need to throw. So I think it's a really good spot.
Completely agree. And then if we move to tight end, we're just going to outline around one guy. So you don't really need to stick too close to his price tag. You can kind of move wherever you want. But the chalk guy that we're looking at is your boy Logan Thomas. You nailed him last week. His price bumped up now, and it looks like he's going to be the chalky option. So you got to get off of him and let me know where else you're going.
Yeah, there's a ton of tight end pivots, honestly. If Gerald Everett misses, you can pivot to Tyler Higbee against the Eagles in that same matchup. I like Thomas versus last week. I love Mike Gesicki at 4K with Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds both out for the Bills. I think that's a really good spot for him to get going. And I think Janu Smith with A.J. Brown out, I think he's in play as well. Like, there's a ton of good cheap tight end plays, and our boy Mo Alley Cox, who I shouted out on the Game Theory podcast, I think he's playable at 3K on DraftKings and tournaments with Doyle out. I think he is in play.
Yep, completely agree. I will add Hunter Henry at 5,100. I do like him. Kansas City is very bad against the tight ends, and I believe he saw 8 targets last week. It just looks like he's a pretty big target for Tyrod Taylor. So as long as Taylor's at quarterback, Hunter Henry seems like he can always be used. Dallas Goedert looks to be more or less like the new Eagles featured tight end, yet Zach Ertz is still 600 more. People probably will gravitate towards Ertz because he's a starter, but Dallas Goedert is going to play a ton of snaps and makes a lot of sense. And then Hayden Hurst at 4,600. I expect him to play a larger role in the offense. Leighton Vander Esch is out. We talked more about that on the Game Theory podcast where Matt went into a little bit more detail. But we can expect a relatively big week from Hayden Hurst, too.
I agree.
That is all that we have. We're not going to go over defense. If you like this video, go ahead, give us a little thumbs up. Comment who you like as your favorite pivot. Let us know who you're pivoting off of, too. And we will be back next week for week 3 of our GPP pivots. Good luck this weekend, everyone.